We're going to start with Betsabeh Emran, who's starring in Majnoun by the... have I pronounced that right?
Yes, very well.
Good. It's by the Anglo-Iranian company 30 Bird. It's going on tour
right.
next week, starting in Edinburgh, and all the dates on the website. But Betsabeh was born, I think, in Tehran in a historic year, 79,
yes,
the year of the fall of the Shah and the coming of the Ayatollah.
That's right, yes. 1979.
You were just a baby, but I know you lived there till you were 8. Were you aware of the huge changes in Iran? What was happening?
It was, well, what a year to be born in. Firstly, I have a twin sister. I'm a twin, which helped matters with difficulties. Of course, also it was the year prior to the, excuse me, the 8-year war as well. So that the changes so much didn't affect me and my sister because, of course, we weren't.
But the war must have affected you, and that sense that we all had that Iran was diving backwards in history into a sort of medieval world after the Shah's modernisation. Did your parents protect you from the unnervedness they must have felt?
Well, during a war, there's only so much you can protect your children. I mean, we heard the attacks, the bombings, and all sorts of things. It was pretty dreadful. So yes.
But were there restrictions on the way you could live? I mean, did you have access to the West? Did you have access to things like television?
No, yes. Well, we had the Wombles. I mean, it was dubbed, but we had the Wombles. But oh yes, we had television. Everything like that was there in its place. I mean, of course, the programs were very different to before I was born, as my parents have always told me. But yes, generally.
And at home, though, you had your own entertainment, as it were. I know you're a very musical family. Your father's a music teacher and composer. Your brother's a composer. Did you and your sister get started early on music?
No, I don't have a brother. Sorry.
Oh, so I thought, I don't know where the brothers come from. But
I might have done. He might have been a composer.
But you have a twin sister.
I have a twin sister. Oh, yes. My mother is an artist and a short film director, and my father is a composer. And my twin sister and I, we started the piano when we were very, very young, at the age of 2.
2?
Yes, very young, very young. I mean, I'm told we were reading music before we were reading words. So, yes, very, very young. And I guess that was our way of escaping the horrible, horrid environment of war and things like that. So
when did you come to England?
88 was the year we came to England.
So you're about 9 years old.
Yes,
by
that's
now.
right. 9.
Was that difficult? I mean,
very.
Did you speak English at that stage?
No.
The Wombles had been dubbed. So
yes, that's it. So
them.
Uncle Bulgaria was, yes, it had a very interesting name. It was very hard. The language English is very difficult to learn. I'm still learning today. And also, like the programs and going outside and people not wearing the veil and homework. We didn't get homework when I came here. Whereas in Iran, I was doing, maths equations at the age of 7 and working hard, hours of homework every evening. And then I came here and we were given a milk bottle and a straw, and I was delighted, brilliant. Okay, I can go home
and we wonder why standards are going down.
You've been back, I know, a couple of times at least,
yes,
haven't you?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
But the dislocation of Iran and the changes in society, that's really what this play Majnoun is about, isn't it?
Right, yes.
How does it? I mean, how is it interpreted?
Well, Majnoun is a comedy. I've got to point that out. It's a comedy about the introduction of Western modernism in traditional Iran in the 1920s and 30s. So it's the exact opposite of the 1979 situation. It was. Sorry, I forgot the question.
Well, it's just how Majnoun works. I know there's a lot of stuff in it about the dress codes, for instance. The Shah was absolutely obsessive about improving westernising the dress. You weren't allowed to go around looking Eastern.
No, that's it. He thought it was backwards, and they introduced the chapeau, the trilby hat, and were forcing men. I mean, it was actually quite tragic. There were lots of men who couldn't deal with it. There were suicides and all sorts of things. And
because they were made to wear weird Western trilby hats.
That's right, and women were forced to unveil, and there's a story about women who didn't dare to do it, and in order to go to they had public baths in those days, and in order to get there, instead of walking where they were visible, they would get ladders and travel from rooftop to rooftop to get to the actual public baths. So it was quite a dramatic and for some tragic change. But I asked my mother about it, and she said my great-grandmother, her grandmother, she was one of the first to kind of just take it off and move on happily. It wasn't a problem for her.
I used to go there in the 70s, Tehran, then went to there. And I certainly didn't see a veil. It was a very modern city.
Yes,
as far as we could see.
That's it, yeah.
Do you personally feel torn between the idea of the old culture and the idea of the westernised, modern Iranian culture? Or are you 100% kind of Western girl now?
No, I'm still traditional in some sense, but I mean, my family, I mean, we wore it outside of where you have to, but I mean, we were never, you know, I didn't always cover up. It wasn't like that at all. It wasn't a big thing in my family. So the transition wasn't that difficult, but yeah, so I wouldn't say I was.
The moral of it really seems to be that it shouldn't be forced either way. I mean, it was forced one way in the 20s. It's been forced the other way in the 80s.
Yeah,
these things evolve, and ways of being evolve.
Yes, and in the 1920s and 30s, it was almost forced liberalisation, and that makes no sense whatsoever. Which is why we had the suicides and But you know, it should be some sort of self-liberalisation rather than forced.
It must be rather an edgy time to be a group of Iranian performers in Britain right now. Omid Jalili the other week said that he's got friends who won't say they're Iranian, they say Persian, because it sounds less threatening and more like a fluffy cat.
Oh, right. I thought it was just because it sounds nicer. Yeah, fluffy cat, there you go.
But I mean, do you feel, I mean, how do you feel audiences will be? Do you think they'll be sort of curious, you know, these sinister Iranian people?
Well, in Manchester, when we performed it last year in Manchester, the response was fantastic. We had, the majority were British, the audience, and they loved it. It was, I mean, as I said, it's a comedy. It's not an issue-based play at all. It must be pointed out. It deals with the serious issues in a comedic manner. We have Hitchcock. We have a scene where we do a Hitchcock scene from Dial M for Murder, and it's really quite funny. And how, I mean, that's relevant in the sense that, you know, with the westernisation, with the introduction of modernism, cinema, Hollywood films came in, and with the trilby hats and the pop underground music. So I mean, it's not the kind of play that forces you know, opinions and views on people at all. It's not like that at all. So it's not threatening, I don't think, no.
Everybody here has got, to some extent, sort of tangled roots, haven't they? Lord Young, you're Lithuanian by ancestry, aren't you?
My father came here when he was 5 years old, yes.
And did you have a sort of pullback to it or an interest in it, or was it just completely
no, because my parents were forced out. I mean, my grandfather was pogromed and they were forced out of Lithuania, so there had been no great desire to sort of come back and do there. But it was very different because immigrants, when they came in those days, wanted to conform. And my father was 5 when he came. Before long, he was playing cricket and keeping wicket, and then took up golf, and then he just wanted to be English. Today, it seems people coming in want to still stay at home, and that, I think, causes one of the problems.
But there were always groups which had roots. I mean, I bet there were other people, Lithuanian families, where, you know, they would murmur the old Lithuanian folk tales to the children of an evening.
They would keep their food often. They would certainly keep their religion. They would keep things, but they wanted to really to conform. And I suppose it was a more homogeneous society in those days. That was probably part of it. I don't know, but the Irish,
I think there was more consensus about the way people should be and the way things went on.
Right.
But it may have been that behind the conformism, or to the side of it, there was a kind of private sense of where you'd come from.
Yes.
And that's a wonderful balance to keep, I think. Yes. I mean, identity politics has become quite a strong and fashionable thing in the last 30 years.
But not to impose your viewpoint on other people, which seems to be happening a bit today.